Welcome back to Durian ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing. You are at the Durian Heat, where we discuss critical matters from Southeast Asia, sustainable development goals in Malaysia. Malaysia's wealth of natural resources has been indispensable to its economic growth, but this growth has come at significant human and environmental cost. Although the Southeast Asian nations met all 8 of UN's Millennium Development Goals, MDGs, before the 2015 deadline, PM Najib Razak has admitted that MDGs fell short of achieving truly sustainable development. And with the arrival of SDGs, comprising 17 environmental, economic, and social objectives, Malaysia has made several official commitments to sustainable development. And today at the Durian Heat, I'll be speaking to Anthony Tan, who is the Executive Director of SEDEM, Center for Environment, Technology and Development Malaysia, as well as Sunita Bisan, who is the Chair, Environment and Climate Change Commission National Council of Women's Organization NCWO, and also a founder of Panita Jaya.
The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
Yes, thank you very much. MDGs started at the beginning of this millennium, and it had 8 goals, mainly reducing poverty, looking at universal education, promoting gender equality, and so forth. Now, in theory, it is applied to all countries, but in reality, generally it was considered for how poor countries should reach those targets, basically.
So it was mainly for the undeveloped countries.
Developing
Countries, right?
Developing
Okay.
countries to reach to alleviate their conditions and poverty situation. So it's good in that sense to have the MDGs, but as we reach 2015, which is the deadline of MDGs, for example, the World Bank measured that still 1 billion people live below $1.25 US per day, and almost more than 800 million people are still starving and have not enough food to eat, and it's a challenge for them.
So they have not really broken into the threshold.
Yes,
when it comes to
not so far. There are still gaps and challenges to which we have not met with the MDG globally.
All right,
globally. And because of that, we've moved on to discuss what we call the Sustainable Development Goals. And if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, and now they call it also the Agenda 2030, which generally shows you how long it's going to be now, for 15 years. So from 2015 to 2030, you're going to have what you call the Sustainable Development Goals, which countries have agreed upon to take as, and that's where we're going to head forward. But if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, what is important to recognize is that the Sustainable Development Goals was not designed after MDGs. In fact, the Sustainable Development Goals was much earlier on. It had a long history. It started, I think, well before with the movement of sustainable development from the 1960s to 1970s, and right up to our Rio conference in 1992. And the whole SDG per se came about at the Rio Plus 20 summit. So at the Rio Plus 20 summit, the nations came together again, and we discussed certain points. And one of the points was going back to the issue of sustainability, and how the new millennium, or how we should define our world, and how it should be, how development should be addressed, basically. So the SDG came out from that, and it had a long, I would say, consultative process, an interactive process, and it's rather different from MDGs, because the joke with MDGs has always been that it was well, and it's always the joke that it was done within walls.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's only conducted and drafted in meeting rather than a consultative process. While the SDG has a long history. But mind you, for many of us who are from the environmental movement, this is a very welcoming, what I would say, a very welcoming
steps or
interest and aspiration, both for the globe. And I think that we are very critical at this moment of our civilization, that our planet is in crisis. Yeah, and that in order to do anything, we actually really need to take concrete steps forward. And these are some of the concrete steps forward. And SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, have, if I may, yes, it has. What do we have?
We have a lot.
We have 17 goals.
Yeah,
that's correct.
169 targets and more than 300 indicators.
Yeah, but even though that's extensive, if you look at the Agenda 21, to which I think quite a lot of what the SDGs was being premised upon, Agenda 21 had, I think, almost 300 pages, 40 chapters, and really quite extensive. So in some ways, we are trying to reach out. I think the world is trying to reach out, and it's trying to be to reach out and have a development process that is holistic. Yeah. So I think that's what is important with this SDGs, that it's holistic. And the SDGs, I think, first of all, we need to understand what sustainable development means. Really, what do we mean when we say sustainable development? Not just the goals, but what is sustainable development? And the mantra, so far, that it has to be a development that does not, compromise the ability of the future generation,
right,
to survive. So basically, you're looking at both economic issues and aspects. You look at cultural, social issues,
correct,
and you also look at the environment. But if we take what have happened throughout our developmental process, the environment has somehow been put to the back burner.
Oh, so less priority on the environmental issues.
And this is why we are facing what we are facing now.
I see.
Because you're although you say that environment is important, you don't really walk that talk,
Okay.
so to speak.
Not much on the actions.
You don't really go forward and actually do something that reflects that commitment. And I think that it's about time, that we see this kind of commitment that looks very much into the ecological issues first.
Anthony, you can further elaborate on the SDG as well as how public has been receiving the whole image of this SDG so far.
Okay, there are 17 goals. I won't go through all the goals, but
sure.
I'll just mention the goals which are more related to the environment, as what Sunita was alluding to. SDG 6 talks about clean water and sanitation. SDG 7 talks about affordable and clean energy. SDG 11 speaks about sustainable cities and communities. 12, responsible consumption and production. 13 is very, very clear on climate change, and thank you, Leonardo DiCaprio, for saying
yes,
something.
He did, yeah.
Okay. 14 and 15, life below water, life on the land. But SDG 17 is something which I think Sunita would agree. Partnerships for the goals. And some people have even used the term leave no one behind. What is, I think, very important, number one, the goals are very broad. Number two, the goals are very inclusive. Although I did not mention about gender equality.
Yes, my field.
Yeah, that is... for Sunita, that's a whole talk show by itself.
Oh, right.
A series.
That could be another topic, right?
And then reduce inequalities. I am, well, just to let you know, I'm actually working on a project which talks about renewable energy and energy efficiency. And one of the things which many people may not admit, but is true, is that the Minister of Home Affairs is the one that actually decides what the Finance Minister buys, especially for homes. Right? So the husband may think he's in charge, but it's the wife that will make the strongest suggestion to buy which particular washing machine, up to which car to buy.
All those details.
Yes, all those details. And to a certain extent, there's a bit of gender inequality when it comes to purchases. But but I think that's good. Because when a lady looks at buying something, it has to last, it has to be cheap in operating, and it has to make sense. You leave it to a guy, he'll buy a 152-inch TV.
So you're saying the girls are being a bit more practical.
Yeah, practicality. But coming back to the discussion on the SDG, we have to be very clear that this is on a long haul. And what Sunita was saying about the process starting way back when in the 1970s.
Yes, she mentioned,
2012, they decided that in Rio Plus 20, SDGs are something to be looked at after the time frame for the MDGs. Although SDG and MDGs are, as what Sunita said, not fully related, it's not one replacing the other, but it's a progression.
Right, of the whole process
it's
so far.
It's a holistic progression. And that 1 year period in 2015 was an open door process where I think for one of these very, very few situations, government, business and civil society got together and came to an agreement that this is something which the world has to aspire for.
You're now listening to Durian ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing.